Remington.
Matt.
We're live, bro.
I love it. I love it. I was out last week. I'm back. I'm back.
Are you speaking Spanish in your head a little bit?
Yeah, I have been. I've been having to kind of break things down a little bit.
Well, this is the Listen to This Bull live show. My name is Matt Mulholland. That is Remington Nuggets. I said your name for you. If I let you say my name for me, you would get it wrong.
Matt Mulholland.
Mulholland, yeah, whatever. Big Law himself is with us again. It's been a while. Haven't been on the show in some time. People forgot that you even exist. They started asking me if you were dead. And I was like, no. I don't think he's dead.
I'm alive.
I hope that I'm probably your point of contact if you die, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Call Matt, please, for all your questions, for sure. Right. No, I've been on. I just haven't been last week. I think that was it.
That's all right. I wasn't on last week either.
Oh,
apparently I wasn't on the show or on my scooter. I fell off of a scooter trying to be cool and then hurt myself and then handed the camera to TJ McCormack, who's supposed to be on the show today and isn't. And he just closed it. He just closed the live like a schmuck. Anyway, this is the show that you can ask us any question you want about anything preferably related to insurance claim buggery. But who knows? It could be about whatever you'd like. How many faces Remington shot while he was away? Something along those lines would work out just fine. He would have to tell you.
Whatever you like. Shoot with it. Shoot from the hip. We're here.
Right. I'm going to run the sequence and we'll be set.
What do you
got a beer from another attorney.
What is it? Is it an IPA?
It is a black ale.
I don't know.
I've never had a black ale. I didn't even know it existed. Black ale aged in oak barrels with vanilla beans and coffee added. Tim, I can't remember. God. Having a brain fart for his name, otherwise I'd say it. His name is Tim. Met him in Chicago. Really nice guy. John Senek thinks he's the best attorney that ever lived. And I said, that's impossible. You've met Remington. And he said, no, he's the best. And I said, well, maybe you haven't met Remington.
I don't think he has. That doesn't even make any sense. That doesn't even make any sense.
That does not compute. All right. So until John gets on here, we could talk about whatever. Does anybody have anything specific they want to talk about? Some bullshit they ran into recently, something along those lines would be fantastic. Otherwise, we're just going to ramble on about bullshit. What did you do out there?
I went on a hunting trip with me, my dad, my brother, and a couple of my best friends. We went to Argentina. This thing's been pushed back for like 3 years because of COVID. Now they allowed Americans back into the country. So we went finally, and we're there for a week and came back to a Santa Claus list of things to do. And I've been playing catch up. I have caught up, and I'm ready to rock and roll now. So
it's only Tuesday. You're already caught up?
I'm already caught up. Long couple 48 hours for sure, but I'm caught up and ready to go.
Well, that's good.
Matt, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
Have you, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, I'm just shooting here. Have you noticed a decrease in materials, or is it still going up? Like, I honestly want to know that because I'm hearing two different sides of the story.
That does not taste like an ale. That is very, very thick.
That is like
much more like a porter. So now materials seem to have had a second resurgence of being missing. Okay. Certain materials definitely seem like they hit this stride where they kind of somewhat caught up a little bit and then just plummeted again, and you cannot get a hold of some of the materials. Specific things. Isoboard is very, very difficult to get a hold of. There's TJ McCormack is actually one of the suppliers for Isoboard that actually has it still. It's kind of crazy. Which you wouldn't think about someone like that being a supplier for a specific material. World's greatest roofer, supplier of ISO. It's kind of crazy. But he had the foresight to think that this was not going to be something that was going to go away anytime soon. But now he's He found himself a supplier, went through all the effort during all of COVID and got that thing. It was pretty amazing. When he gets on here, I'm not going to talk nearly as good about him.
No, we don't do
No.
that. Not in front of people. We don't like to boost egos here. That's not what we're here for, is it, Matt?
No, we don't boost egos. We knock them down.
We knock them down. Hey, I've had an issue coming up more prevalently here, and I know this is an issue in different states, and in other states this has been case law where there is no issue. This is the law. Depreciating labor, and I'm telling you, every state, it's gonna end up going all the way up to Court of Appeals. I can see it coming from a mile away, and it's happening. Do you have any opinions on, first off, depreciation of labor in itself, and then secondly, playing devil's advocate, can you at any point have a good reasoning behind why carriers are, other than saving money, like actual reasoning that labor should be depreciated? And I'm just spitballing these issues that I'm telling you, I think we're going to have a year from now or 2 years from now where it's going to become even a more issue, because they're going to push the envelope on this.
I think you're right about that. There are a lot of cases nationwide that are pushing this, and there are a lot of states that have some case law on it already as well. FCNS has a really nice chart that goes state by state that it describes how ACV is calculated, and a lot of those, they start getting into a lot of that language with the cases that are applied to it. But let's start off with how ACV is calculated. You typically have 3 different ways of doing that. You got your replacement cost minus depreciation, which might be based on age and condition. You got your broad evidence rule, whatever the hell that is. Actually, you can define that for us in just a second. And then you have fair market value. So if it's one of those 3 things. If it's fair market value, then that is a very different thing than replacement cost minus depreciation. Can you even depreciate anything if it's fair market value? I think that we're not talking about a state that has determined that ACV is calculated on fair market value, unless otherwise written in a policy, possibly. So can you describe what broad evidence rule is, though?
For some reason, my screen might be freezing up here, but yeah, the broad evidence rule is where you look at other states. Is it? Am I froze?
No, you got to read this. Eric Rhodes says, "Listen to Sproul dropping knowledge like a limp-wristed librarian."
I'll take it. Oh my God, that's great. No, the broad evidence rule is where you look at, for instance, like you can look at different states on how they calculate different things. You can pull different materials that's not maybe necessarily in the 4 corners of a policy and so forth. So that is big picture.
Bringing in evidence to broad evidence, meaning evidence from outside of industry to come up with, or not necessarily outside, but from anywhere that could provide any kind of reasonable evidence to support your position. That's the broad evidence rule in a nutshell, right?
Yep. There you go. Perfect. That's the best way to explain it.
It's broad. So the fair market value is the value at which you could sell something at that moment. It is the market value. Someone would purchase it for this price. That's its fair market value. So if ACV is calculated as fair market value, let's say it's a house and it appreciates over time. So the fair market value might actually be higher than its replacement cost in some situations.
And Matt, they like to say this, like the fair market value calculation for ACV is the fair market value of that property before the loss and the fair market value of that property after the loss. And the ACV payment is that difference. Does that make sense?
Actually. No, that does. That's you corrected the course there. I was definitely going off course. So the fair market value is how much you could sell the property for, but before the loss, if you didn't have that damage, the property should be a higher value than it is after the damage. Now, if it's negligible, though, which in many cases, when you're talking about a home's value, it could be, unless you've totaled a specific large part of the property, like the roof or the walls or something along those lines. If it's a $10,000 or $12,000 difference in value, because that's how much it costs to replace a roof, though, then I don't know who gets to make that determination. Those are appraisable items. It's basically you could get a home appraiser involved and ask them if there was a difference if the roof wasn't damaged. The question becomes, how do they know that part?
And
They're
why
comparing values of houses that have sold in the area. Do they try to find houses that have sold in the area without a roof on it or something? I don't know how that would actually work.
Look, I've had carriers try to argue this as their explanation to calculate an ACV, but after really just hammering it in, they always have, in my experience, have fell back to the RCV minus depreciation equals ACV calculation. Look, at 95% of 99% of all claims, that's how they do it. But it is interesting. It's interesting because, like you said, you do have, at that point, you have to get property appraisers involved in an adjustment of a claim. Like, where does it say property appraisers in the policy? Like, it doesn't.
Right.
It's a strange avenue, and there's just a select amount of states that actually support that. And in fact, that's more used and more prevalent in automobile damage than it is, real property is what I call it, damage. So
more likely than not, those will be the states where they start trying to describe ACV differently in some cases and try to apply fair market value specifically to auto or policies arising, or auto policies, claims arising out of auto policy. That's what I'm trying to say. Kind of like the Georgia property section of their regulations. But if we're going into actual cash value as replacement cost minus depreciation, and depreciation is based on age and condition, then you have to start off with replacement cost. And the replacement cost does include the labor, right? So if the labor is included in the replacement cost and then you're depreciating based on age and condition, you could say that labor occurred previously 20 years ago, so the age of the labor is 20 years old. That could go into quality, current. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. To be honest, I've attempted to try to wrap my head around that concept from the carrier side, and it doesn't really make sense. Have you seen any of the arguments on some of those claims or cases where they've tried to argue that labor is depreciable?
I have read some of those, and I'm with you, Matt. I truly do in a lot of these issues in property insurance. I try to put myself in the shoes of the insurance company and say, okay, why are they doing this or that, or does it make sense? I truly can't necessarily, I understand what they're doing, but I don't see how it's reasonable for them to do this and just say, oh yeah, because like you said, it's the age and condition of those materials at the time of the loss. That's what ACV is.
If we say it that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can, in Xactimate, you can apply depreciation either as a percentage, and you can checkbox whether or not you want labor to be depreciated or not. But then if it's just a checkbox, and really the question is, are we defining RCV as a replacement cost for material and labor and ACV as the depreciation just for material? Or it's just a question of whether or not we're going to do it. If we're saying that we're only depreciating material, then it's easy for us to get mind boggled and say, well, we're not going to depreciate labor because the labor hasn't changed in age. But if we're depreciating based on a percentage of lifespan of the material for the replacement cost of that material, which would include labor, then it seems like it could be possibly implied that labor would be depreciated at the same rate as the material would be. I don't like either argument 100%, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of times where a carrier's been successful on this is where it actually says that they're depreciating labor in the policy.
Javier asks, how long does it take for a hoe to get a check? Depends on how quick I'm done. She don't accept checks.
I'm not going to comment on that one, but that was pretty good.
Yeah. All right. So this is his actual question. Appraisal question. Let's say the homeowner carrier agrees. I was about to say argues. Agrees with the homeowner amount or umpire sides with homeowner's appraiser amount. Does homeowner get the full funds minus deductible, or does it get depreciated? This is actually a state-specific kind of a question. Let me ask you, Remington, for the states that you work in, if an appraisal award is submitted, it says that becomes the amount of loss, but does it have to go back through the same process of bifurcating the payment?
Yeah. Policy language is different on this, and it is state specific on some things, but I can tell you this, it's pretty much been a 50-50 where they'll actually, of course, I'm just letting you know, they will take out the deductible. So that question is yes, they need to minus the deductible 100%. Okay. Secondly, second part of the question is a 50-50 coin flip. Sometimes they will pay the ACV, wait for documentation, certificate of completion, and then issue the depreciation. And sometimes they will just issue the entire amount. Here's my suggestion to you, to all listeners, is if you have an appraisal award and you got the RCV minus deductible, if you're a public adjuster or if you're an attorney out there or if you're a homeowner, say, hey, we will sign a release if you pay the full appraisal amount minus deductible. And it works a lot of times. They'll say, okay, fine. Because guess what? That now doesn't leave them open to supplements and things like that. If you want the money quicker, I'm just saying, if the homeowner's good with that, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a good situation, but I'm just throwing ideas that have worked in the past.
There's clearly a benefit to the insurance carrier of then bifurcating the payment at that point. If you don't end up incurring the full cost or spending the full cost of that appraisal amount, then they wouldn't owe you for the recoverable depreciation for that because you never actually end up spending or incurring it. So there is a benefit to the carrier to want to do that. In the appraisal language for most policies, it does state that the amount of loss or the amount of the award becomes the amount of loss. But the amount of loss is specifically utilized in different ways in the policy. But also in the loss payment provision, it says when we will pay within X amount of days of receiving a proof of loss and an agreement is made or an appraisal award is submitted. And there might be other items on that list, but if they're going to pay within a certain amount of time, once an appraisal award is submitted, the question becomes, do they have to pay the full amount within that amount of time? Or can it still just go back through the RCV payment schedule that's built into the policy? I can see it going both ways, but there are states that specify in case law that they have to pay the full amount. I don't really know which states those are.
Yeah. And like you said, it's reasonable to me. It really is for an award to come out and for that award, that amount of loss to now go through the how we settle losses provision in the policy. I understand how they want to utilize that. I do. I don't like it, but I understand it.
And the homeowner will get the check based on that loss payment provision. So for most policies, we will pay within X amount of days after we receive a proof of loss, which most of you aren't doing, and an appraisal award is submitted. It's an and, it's not an or. Well, and an agreement is made or an appraisal award is submitted, but it's and before those two options, possibly more options. So if you don't have the proof of loss in there, then you may not have triggered the full loss payment provision to make sure that you get payment within that 30, 60, or 90-day period, which is usually what those dates are. If you do submit a proof of loss and also the award, and the award is what is written into that proof of loss is the RCV value and all that kind of stuff, then you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get paid within that time frame. But it might still be bifurcated.
Have you ever had a carrier ask you to submit a proof of loss after an appraisal award?
And honestly, we've done that many times, even if they didn't ask, but they surpassed that payment date. But the only time, especially in the state of Georgia, there's no other statutes or regulations for timeframes for them. So the only thing that I could do to make sure that they had any kind of a time restraint or time limitation was to trigger something in the policy. And that was one way to trigger it. But it was an and. We had to submit that sworn proof of loss to make that work out. So that's what we did.
I like it. I like how you've done that even though they didn't ask for it. It makes sense because it does. Because usually, you know, the loss payment schedule, it's like A, after you submit a proof of loss, and then one of them, whether it's C or D, is appraisal award, you know?
Yeah.
But I like how that would just really, you're triggering multiple of those loss payment items. I like that. Good idea, Matt.
I mean, it's just reading the policy. So Javier's laughing because he doesn't want to pay checks to the hoe either. Does it depend on the carrier? He says it's in Texas. Well, it's going to depend on policy language, possibly. There is, I have seen language where they specify in that language that the amount of loss that is created does have to still be bifurcated. You can almost guarantee that they're going to do that if they specify in their appraisal language that you have to break down the ACV and the RCV. If they don't specify that in the policy language, then like Remington said, it might be 50-50. More and more policies are requiring that the estimate be itemized and an ACV value be associated with it from the appraisers anyway. OP. When are y'all going to make a craft beer company? Huggin' Suds or Bottled Bull? Matt and Remy's adjusters tears.
Oh, I like it. I like it. We need to figure that out. I need to get with my local brewery and get that chalked up. That's for sure.
Dude, that would be fantastic. That would work out.
I like Matt and Remy's adjuster tiers. That's going to be a heavy IPA, like a triple IPA.
Oh man, that's great, OP. Thank you. I've brewed beer before. You have to when you have a beard like this. It's a requirement. You can't even grow the beard until you brew a certain amount of beer like that. It just comes patchy otherwise. So I've had a few batches that were fantastic and was never able to duplicate that. So I would try to make the same thing. It didn't work out. We ended up feeding a lot of plants, a lot of beer. So, yes, sir. So as far as the depreciation goes of labor, I really don't know how that would really work out. But if the state does decide that you're depreciating based on a percentage, which is based almost specifically on age, then you might be able to say that percentage of age for that material and its lifespan could apply to its full replacement cost, which would depreciate the labor as well. But if you're tying condition into it, how do you establish what the depreciation for something's condition is?
Again, I've truly tried to coincide with this situation with insurance carriers doing this, and I'm ready because I'm just in Georgia right now. There is not a case law that says you don't depreciate labor or you do depreciate labor. It's going to happen. And I want to make sure that I'm involved in that because I'm going to put up a huge battle when that comes to light. So if anybody ever has a case in Georgia that has anything to do with depreciating labor and it being an issue, please let me know. I will take it by the horns and run with it. But there's only really the majority of states don't have case law that say yes or no. There are obviously some that do, but the majority of states do not say yes or no right now. It's going to happen. I don't know, man. I wanted to pick your brain about it because, like I said, it's something hard to wrap your mind around because it's the condition and condition of materials at the time of loss, and I just don't know how the element of labor is being applied to that, like reasonably. And common sense wise, to me, it just doesn't. Unless it's in the policy, I just don't see how they have a good argument. I haven't heard a good argument for it. Tennessee has some case law in the books that says that labor can't be depreciated. Yep. I wonder how that case came out and what the argument was there. We do have in the regulations, in the 120 regs, under property losses, they talk about auto, and they do have fair market value written into the regs for Georgia. And if we actually do get that sit down with the DOI next month to talk about adding some timeframes into regulations for insurance carriers for the first time ever, maybe that conversation needs to come up as well. They're going to have to adapt the 120 regs to include property losses that don't arise out of auto policies,
maybe that's how you could tie that conversation into the Department of Insurance. I know with the regulation changes that I wrote, I definitely put some stuff in there about it.
Yeah, for sure. I know you did. No, that's a great way to get the foot in the door when it comes to that. There's no doubt. So I'm all about it, and got an email actually that there will be a hearing supposedly in May about it. So I'll when it happens, I will.
I know how it should actually work. I get it.
Yeah, I know.
The age of the installer has to be taken into account. If you're a really old repair guy, that's much more depreciation for the age of your labor.
I swear, Matt, that crossed my mind. I was like, what are we like the guy is like, doesn't get, is he just, he's 95 and therefore, we should depreciate that type of labor.
Based on age and condition. So, if they're a meth head, that's a very low condition as well.
That is funny.
The value of a craftsman's labor does not depreciate over time. Material condition at the time of loss has depreciated in value over time since factory new. Right, but that dude got old during that time too, right? Right? Makes sense.
I mean, he does.
I'm applying adjuster logic. If labor is considered a material fact as part of the Marshall Swift valuation of the policy premium value, how can you diminish the value of a material fact over time? And does clock reset at renewal?
Opie.
Material fact? Opie. You're so close to having something intelligent here, but
I know. You're almost there, Opie. You're almost there, buddy. Hey, keep on shooting, man. Keep on shooting.
My buddy Opie, a material fact is definitely doesn't have to do with actual materials. It's just a fact that is material to the case.
Yeah, it's a significant fact to any type of claim or case.
But it is a material fact as part of the valuation.
If people out there don't know who Mr. Waddell is, he is.
I'm very confused on what you're actually asking.
Funny guy.
Label is part of the finished installed materials. Labor is no longer in those materials, I don't think. I think the labor happens at one time. I don't know. If you are evaluating RCV, labor is definitely involved because it is part of the replacement cost. It's reasonable and necessary to have someone actually performing the work, not just to have the materials appear on the property and in proper order. But if you are going to depreciate it based on age, that labor doesn't really age with it. Now, the age of the installer does, but that's a ridiculous thing. We're talking about quality of installation. Does the quality of the installation reduce? Not really. It's the same quality installation. It should remain the same from day one that it's installed as well. I don't know. If anybody out there, if I know insurance adjusters watch this show, I know you do. If you're watching, I want your best argument. All right. I will give you all the time of day. I'm not one of those interviewers. Remington isn't either. We're not going to beat you up. We really won't. Both of us actually enjoy having a good, reasonable argument with somebody.
Absolutely.
We will allow you to have your case and say it. As long as you're not interrupting us, we won't interrupt you. If you are an insurance adjuster and you would like to come on the show and argue with us about it, I would love to have a good, solid, friendly argument about depreciating labor, or maybe about the difference between functional and cosmetic damage or something along those lines. I think that would be a lot of fun.
I'm all for it. And think about this concept, Matt, and I know we touched on this already, but going just a step further, ACV is for materials, the age and condition of the materials at the time of the loss. So if they're 10 years old, the ACV payment is for materials that are 10 years old. Right. But if you are to get materials that are 10 years old, that were the materials prior to that loss, right, that are damaged now, to actually replace a roof system, we'll just use roofs, the labor doesn't change. The labor is still going to be the same price, if not more, because you're dealing with old materials.
That's true. It doesn't matter if they're selling used or new. They're still going to charge the same labor rate. Maybe more because they have to go through the process of actually selecting good materials in that.
Exactly. So
If you were taking tile, if we're going to talk about roofs, if you were taking tile off of a boneyard and reinstalling those because that is allowed by code, then would the tile installer cost less based on the age of the tile that they're installing? No, it wouldn't.
the answer is no.
No.
The answer is no. So that's why I can't get past that portion of it. I really can't.
If you think about depreciation instead of as depreciation, but more as a limited amount of money that the insurance company has to pay you, then it makes more sense. Anything that they can do to limit the amount of money that they're paying out instead, if you just think of it as a deduction more than depreciation, right?
There you go. There you
Then
go.
it makes sense. You just have to think about it in their terms.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I get it, man.
Oh, I don't know if I should put this up. The Mexicans at the Exxon on 285 exit 14 says, "Sorry, senor, price go up." I don't know why I did it with the accent. Does that say something about me? Am I an asshole? Shit.
Matt, what are some things that you're seeing? I know you're on the forefront down at National Claims Institute, and you've done some
Tell you what,
speeches.
I've been consulting with a handful of public adjusters. I haven't been practicing as a PA myself. So really it's the consultations that I'm doing that's keeping me sharp for the most part and keep a pulse on what's going on. More and more people are having issues with engineer appointments than anything else. And to the point that I actually developed a course for it for NCI, dealing with engineers, which I haven't even really had a chance to talk to you about because you've been gone, shooting things in the face. Speaking Spanish and shooting things in the face. But yeah, so we've actually developed a course on dealing with engineers. It's a one-day course that I'm actually taking on the road. It's the first time we're going to go on tour for something, which would be really interesting. And we're gonna do it in Texas first, in Dallas on the 28th. So
Okay.
if you happen to be in the Florida area and you'd like to come to dealing with engineers, go to NCI's website and you'll see that on there. But engineers often will write stuff in their reports that is outside of their competency, or they'll say something on site that's very, very different from what ends up in their reports. And it makes you start to wonder about that. Have you ever deposed an engineer, Remington?
Many times, many times.
Anything surprising ever come out of
that? No, I kind of expected their answers, but no, I'm joking. Yes, once you actually once you like peel back the layers of the onion, some of these engineers, their qualifications, they should not be a forensic structural engineer. That's not what they went to school for. And in fact, they've only been on, a very limited amount of roofs or structural inspections. So ask the questions to these engineers, and Matt can tell you better than I can because, he's been on the front lines meeting these engineers at inspections hundreds of times. And actually, Matt actually likes to, I've seen it firsthand where he fights engineering reports and gets claims overturned. So no, I
like those.
And when I do depose an engineer, I don't do a 2-hour deposition. I like to go 6 hours and just really just hammer them. I do
grill them.
I do. I say, all right, this is one of those days.
All right, this is our bathroom break. It's only 1 minute long.
Yep. And when you do that, when you ask somebody for 6 hours questions, really, substantive questions, you realize that they don't know as much as you thought they did, or they like.
And they don't. Do they realize it though?
I feel like they do afterwards. Really? That's my accomplishment. Yeah, for sure.
How do you feel about engineers making statements on weather data?
I understand why they use the weather data, because then they can conform that into their report. However, it shouldn't be the all be all say all, because as anybody that actually knows about weather data and has done research on weather data knows that it's not accurate. Not all of it's accurate. It's not. So
it's wildly inaccurate.
The
best stuff out there is still completely inaccurate. No, you might get lucky that it happens to be true.
Yes, 100%. For instance, this is great that you brought this up. I just got a case. It's a car, not a car dealership. I'm sorry. Gosh, look, I'm going back to Argentina time. But it's a car repair shop. Okay, it's a pretty big car repair shop.
Like a body shop?
Yeah, exactly, a body shop. And I got the engineering report yesterday from the carrier. It said on this date there was no hail that fell at this site. I sent it to my client and I got on the phone and talked with him about it. And he was like, wow, that's funny because I have a video of hail hitting my building on this date. I was like, send it to me. And Matt, I swear it was just everywhere coming down. And I was like, so this all, and if you ask the engineers the questions, okay, well, for this particular weather platform, at what elevation were they measuring hail? At what elevation were they measuring wind speeds? When was it? All these questions that they don't know. They don't know this stuff. So it just proves, I've seen it where it's just wildly inaccurate. And that's the best way I could put it. What about you, Matt?
There was a report that I stumbled across not that long ago where someone specifically went and measured based on the size of dents in metal, which can give you a fairly good, within like a 5% accuracy rate of the size of the hail that fell at that location. Depending on the particular gauge of the metal, the type of metal, all that kind of stuff. There's a report called Hail Sizing It Up by Jim D. Coons. Anyway, they used that information to make observations on the weather data says it was supposed to be 1.5 inches, and in fact, it was this size at this location. And they did that for more than 100, but less than 200 locations nationwide. And they concluded that it was about 51% accurate to what was actually reported at that location at the time. 51%. If I got things right only 51% of the time, I'd be fired. I would definitely be out of money. My wife would have left me, and my kids would be half retarded.
I would be out of a job as well. I would be out of a job as well.
So this, 51% is wildly inaccurate. And there's a good reason for it. They are measuring at altitude. The radar that's tracking this stuff has to measure at a diagonal because it has to go over land features. You can't go straight across. If there's hills or mountains, it's got to go up. So it's going to measure something at altitude, and then it has to fall. And while it's falling, by the way, it's coming out of a thunderstorm. There's other stuff associated with thunderstorms other than hail. Strong-ass winds. Hail doesn't fall straight down when there's strong-ass winds affecting it. So it's going to go in many different directions. And it might be pushed down. It might be pulled up. It might float down very slowly. It might be driven downward by downward flow of air. There's all kinds of things. There's eddies. There's spirals. It can come in different directions in the same storm. It can hit different sides of a house of the same storm. Did you know that? Sorry. Anyway, it's wildly inaccurate, and even the best stuff that's out there. I think HailTrace is probably one of the better reporting systems, but it still is wildly inaccurate. Unless there is a ton of weather spotters in your area, you're probably not going to have good data. And those weather spotters have to be registered with NOAA in order for it to go into their data set so that it can actually be applied to a lot of the algorithms that are out there. If it's wind, it's even worse because they can't track wind unless there's an object in the air moving with it. So unless it's raining or hailing or something, if it's a clear day and there's a ton of wind, they're not tracking any of that. The only place they are tracking that is at weather stations, airports, where they have an anemometer spinning at 30 feet above ground level. And that might be 5-6 miles away from the location at your address. And that doesn't come into account with any of the obstacles that the wind has to get through near your address. Airports are wide open. So typically they have higher winds there, wherever they have that anemometer. If you are in a neighborhood where there's other houses and trees, it's probably not going to be nearly as fast in your neighborhood. But if you're up on a hill, it might be faster because at elevation, wind speeds get higher. And if you have a super steep roof, it's going to be super speedy on your roof because anywhere wind changes direction, Due to the Bernoulli effect, it actually speeds up. There's all kinds of things that go into it. Here's the real kicker. If an engineer isn't a meteorologist, do they really have the competency or the credentials to make any kind of commentary on weather data?
I think it's one of those things where they can't go into real deep substance about weather data, besides saying there was 1.5 inches hail on this date, and this damages that I saw during my inspection looks to be around 1.5 inches. I think that's as far as they can go. If not, a good attorney can pick them apart. There's no doubt about it.
Eddie Walker, what's up, buddy? Just had a hail claim in Beaufort approved because the homeowner had video of that hail falling. Adjuster tried to argue that there was no weather report of hail in the area. You're not going to have weather reports all the time. You need to be able to identify evidence that hail fell without weather data, because often it isn't going to exist. Often. So, part of my inspection courses that we teach is really how to puzzle it out, how to be a detective and determine if something was or was not caused by hail, and how to identify all the little things that indicate that a hail event or a wind event occurred recently or not.
Yep.
There's so much that goes into it. It's just not even funny. And here's some other bullshit that goes along with it. Since when does 1 inch hail or greater have to exist in order to cause damage to a sound asphalt shingled roof? The reports that they came up with that information on are so flawed. It's not even funny. They took roofs that were 1 year old, and then the next year they hit it again, 2 years old, all the way to 11 years old. So 10-year study, and they shot it with hail. On year 1, 1 inch hail damaged a 1 year old roof. It didn't damage it on year 2. It took 1.5 inches, but there was a nice linear progression. The older the roof got, the smaller the hail was needed to cause damage to the roof. But they stopped at 11 years old. What if you're looking at a roof, Remington, that's 15 years old, and 1 inch hail hit it, or 0.75 inch hail hit it? Does that report mean that only 1 inch hail could damage a 15-year-old roof?
Doesn't mean much to me, man. And how fast is that hail? How fast is that hail going during that study? How close is it to the shingle when it's shot out? What are the conditions surrounding the experiment? I mean, it just goes on and on and on, that no one can actually set the exact variables on a hail loss into an experiment. They can only collect. Yeah, and there's no way. So
they make assumptions for all of these things. They make assumptions based on terminal velocity, and that terminal velocity even makes assumptions. It's not terminal velocity of a hailstone is actually dependent on quite a bit of variables.
Absolutely.
What is the density of the air that it's falling through? How much moisture is in the air? That actually affects the terminal velocity too. So all of it is assumptions. It's assumptive quasi-science.
And Matt, I swear, those are questions I ask engineers, like in the depots. Those are literally boom, boom, what, when, where, how. They don't know. They don't know.
I would love to come in and sit in on one of those. It's a shame you can't have a guest speaker come in and ask questions. That'd be pretty fun. Wind speed on the date it hailed, yeah, but in what direction? So wind might be measured laterally, but a lot of times it's not measured vertically, or if it is, it's only at altitude. So when you're talking about a thunderstorm, you've got a lot of updraft and downdraft going on. That's actually what creates such turbulent air and the hail and all that. So what if the hail is caught in a downdraft as it comes down? It can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It surprised me when we have a hail cannon now, Remington. I don't know if you saw. We have a hail cannon. I'm pretty excited about it. I started doing a lot of research on terminal velocity so I could figure out exactly how much pressure needs to be in the system when I'm shooting out a 2 inch hailstone. I didn't realize this, but hail's terminal velocity isn't as fast as you might think. Can you make a guess on how fast the terminal velocity of a 2 inch hailstone is based on average conditions?
I do not know. I would like to know the answer though.
Just get a guess.
I would have no idea.
Gotta have something.
No, I want to know.
It's like 72 miles per hour.
Really?
A lot slower than you were thinking, right?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I was thinking like shooting star stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a freaking sphere falling from the sky. How much it would have a lot of friction. I thought that it would be a much higher than that. That's definitely a lot slower than I would have assumed. Now, that's just terminal velocity based on specific conditions. And there is an ASTM report that talks about exactly what I'm going to call it an algorithm, a specific formula that you base the conditions of the air volume that it's falling through off of. ASTM has some testing on that. So I'm using the ASTM numbers to come up with a lot of stuff, but it is much slower than I would have anticipated.
That's
but
interesting.
That's just vertical. Now, if there is any lateral movement on top of it, if you got vertical dropping speed and a little bit of lateral movement sideways, it's the hypotenuse of that triangle that actually gives you the full velocity of the hail. So you got a squared plus b squared equals c squared to come up with the actual velocity of the hailstone that's going across. And just a little bit makes a huge difference. If you've got 20 mile per hour winds laterally, the average thunderstorm has gusts of 35 to 40 mile per hour winds. That might add another 20 miles per hour to your hailstone just because of lateral movement. So now you're in the 90 mile per hour range where something is hitting something.
Yeah.
If you got hit with a baseball at 90 miles per hour, that would friggin' hurt, right?
I was just, that is so weird. You just brought that up. I swear I was just thinking about this. You get a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
If he's throwing 92 mile an hour, okay, let's just say a regular size baseball. Well, let's just shrink that in half. Is that still going to make damage? Like they say, oh, it's not big enough to make damage. But if it's going that fast and it's hitting, I mean, it's going to make damage. It just maybe not as much, but it's going to make damage. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I think about something small hitting you at that same speed. It would still hurt. It might not have as much mass. It would still hurt. Yeah. This is a really interesting comment.
And hey, before you say it, I want to give a shout out to Eddie Walker. He's an awesome guy. He came up with that. He asked a question, and he's a great guy. So I just want to give a shout out to Eddie.
We have to say that because if we don't, he'll probably kick our ass.
Right there. Yeah, he will. I love it, man.
Don't talk bad about Eddie. He's an ex-fighter. Anyway, Stephen Hadhazi. This is a very smart gentleman. I like watching his videos and stuff that's on YouTube. He posts a lot of stuff on Facebook. He doesn't realize this, but I often creep out and read a lot of his stuff because it's very intelligent. Stephen, I'd love to have you on your show. Please come on the show one day. Most hail testing is done indoors. One of the first experiments that we did after we built our hail guns was to leave shingles out in the sun and let them heat up. And then we impacted the shingles. Big difference hitting hot, malleable shingles rather than cold, hard shingles. What was the difference? Was it more or less damage? Malleable, meaning it was a little bit more pliable, it bounced back more, tended to have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe the shingle flexed a little bit and then allowed it to kind of spring back. Or does that allow too much deflection? And the more deflection that you have, kind of like an unsupported shingle, does the additional deflection allow it to end up with more damage to the fiberglass mat? I'd love to know what the results are on that.
Yeah, please, Stephen, give us a follow-up on the results of that. But that's exactly my point where, these big engineering companies, you guys know what they are. They come out with these reports and they say only X amount, size hail can make this much damage, blah, blah, blah. They are making an environment that is going to benefit them. That is what's happening.
You can spin data. Every politician knows you can take anything and turn it into a somewhat of a benefit for you. There's no good crisis, or there's no such thing as a bad crisis. Or
there you go.
Don't want to let a good crisis go to waste. Whatever you want to say, all of those things are probably true. But the reality is, you can spin data if you don't have someone really peer reviewing. Some of these papers were written and published. And I'm not so sure about who was peer reviewing a lot of this because there's definitely holes in it. If I can discover holes, not being a scientist, then how did it get past an editor for one of these things? It kind of blows my mind. I've asked adjusters, were you here when the hail hit? And then they asked you, no, were you? And that argument ended. I think he was surprised by the speed. Eric Rhodes, does the insurer have the right to demand a date of loss before filing a claim? Is it not the responsibility of the insurer? Most of my homeowners are not meteorologists. It is not the responsibility of the insurer. Do you want to hit this one, Remington? Or
Yeah, I feel, and a policyholder. Okay, I'm trying to get out of the attorney realm here because it is 100% my burden to prove that on this particular date there was a loss, or within this policy period there was a loss. That is 100% my burden to prove against the insurance carrier. I think it goes towards the actual homeowner as well when they or a public adjuster, when they have a claim, that they need to have a date of loss. There are some instances where they ask the carrier, hey, look, man, I just noticed my, shingles are torn, creased, misplaced. Can you look up a date of loss for me? And sometimes they will. And sometimes they'll give them a date of loss. But
really?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it where my clients have had that happen, where it's like, I didn't give them a date of loss. I actually asked them, and they said that this looks like the most, the date of loss that probably caused this.
No kidding.
No doubt. Yeah, I've had that happen before, but multiple times.
Was it the agent or the
what? It could have been the agent, Matt. I don't specifically know right now off the top of my head if it was the agent or an adjuster. It probably was the agent. The more you think about it,
the agent. Yeah.
Because a lot of homeowners just contact their agent and they think that they're going to adjust the claim when we all know that it is a whole different ball game. But no, it's the burden of the homeowner. At the end of the day, they need to prove a date of loss, and that's how.
In the policy, the conditions of the policy set what information you have to provide to them on a proof of loss form. But you don't have to submit a proof of loss form unless they request it. But you still have to provide the same information that would be on the proof of loss in order to eventually satisfy that you have given them all that information. So a lot of times those questions are asked by the party that's answering the phone whenever you're filing a claim. They'll ask you when the date of loss is, what the time of loss is. For many policies in the condition section, it'll require you to name the date of loss or the time of loss. It doesn't say anything about date of discovery in the conditions. So you can name the date of discovery all you want. And if it is unknowable what the date of loss is, you could leave it as that. And for some types of claims or some types of like seepage claims or something along those lines that have a hidden damage clause, you might not ever know when the date of loss was. You can make some assumptions on how old it is and how long it's been going on, but you might not know. But if it's a hail loss or something along with weather, you're going to have to make a statement at some point because there is prompt notice requirements by every state. And there's also, suit limitation periods. And the date of loss is going to make a big difference. And it's going to be prejudicial to the insurance carrier what that date of loss is because of those limitations that are in policy based on timeframes from the date of loss. So for most cases, you're going to have to be able to prove or at least provide evidence that your date of loss is correct. That is in the condition section. So the policyholder has to meet those conditions.
I can't agree with Matt more. I don't care if you're a homeowner, contractor, public adjuster, an attorney, you need to have a date of loss and a good date of loss. I can't tell you, I've changed dates of loss multiple times. Get a good date of loss, please.
Do it.
Do it.
There's so many times I get a claim that a contractor filed and the data loss makes no sense. I can't find any storm data under any platform to support that data loss at all. Not even 20 miles away does that storm date even occur or come up with anything. How many times have you had a storm date for like a hurricane 3 states over? It's like, what the fuck? What was that contractor smoking? I don't know. Let me tell you this. Something that you guys should be wary of. For those of you that have stuck it out this long for us, here's a really good nugget that you should be aware of. In some states, they are harping down on public adjusters and contractors that are naming the data loss without the input of the policyholder. and they are accusing those people of acting as an attorney. So you might get accused of acting as a lawyer or acting as an attorney without a license if you were the one naming the data loss, because that is a very fiduciary responsibility. You are taking responsibility for that information. I highly recommend, if you're a public adjuster or a contractor, really if you're a public adjuster, because even the contractor really shouldn't be doing this. If you're a public adjuster, I highly recommend you talk to the policyholder about what you believe the date of loss is or the evidence that you have, but let them make the decision on what the date of loss will be for their claim. If they don't know for sure, provide them all the evidence. You can give them advice, but they need to make the call. You don't want to be accused of being an attorney or acting as an attorney without a license.
As something that's an analogy to that, when I get a settlement offer, I provide my client with all the information that they need to make a call on making a counter offer, declining or accepting, but they have to make that call. So, do the same. You can help them. Like I said, provide them with some data, show them the hail trace, but let them make that call. I think that's a good idea. At the same time, man, I just don't, at the same time, I don't agree with what the carriers are trying to say, because as a public adjuster, you are allowed, you interpret that policy, you have to provide a prompt notice, fill out a proof of loss form, things like that, where, that's kind of your job in the same
I get it. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
If you do make this party, let's have the conversation with the policyholder real quick. Mr. Homeowner.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Remington, how you doing? You been good?
Yeah, I think my shingles are shot though, man.
Oh, they definitely are. Would you like to sign this contract? Listen, this is the data that we've been able to uncover. It looks like, in my opinion, the date of loss would probably be this date. And here's the reasons. The storm damage looks a little bit recent. There's some spatter marks that are on the roof that would mean that it has happened recently. It's not 100% good science, but it's made on some good estimating assumptions. Because there's spatter and multiple different materials out there, I think that this probably happened in the last 6 months. From the storm data I've been able to gather within a 3-mile radius of your house, these are the storm dates that exist that had hail. Based on the size of the damage that I found, I think it's probably this one, but I'm not sure. What do you think? Do you think that date of loss sounds like the right date of loss to you?
There you go.
Say yes.
Yes, absolutely. It looks perfect.
Perfect. So I'm going to write down that data loss. What was that data loss? I need you to say it.
It was April 12th.
Perfect. All right. Done. I'm still giving them advice. It's really not that big a deal, but I've protected myself from a potential lawsuit in the future.
Yep. And I'm with you. I don't think it's, if carriers are going down that path, then they're barking up the wrong tree.
They're trying. They're trying a little hard. Stephen, the hailstones would be able to push into the shingles toward the fiberglass mat further because the asphalt is hot and malleable. That makes sense. It would be like pushing your finger into a hot cookie or a warm apple pie as opposed to a cold cookie. Your finger would go right into the hot cookie. On the same note, I have seen many adjusters totally destroy composition roof by merely performing their inspection during the heat of the day. That's true. I've caused a lot of footfall damage on really hot July days in Georgia, I can tell you that. The steeper the roof and the heavier the adjuster, the more likely their shoes will damage the roof. I'm going to finish that statement because it's not showing up on my end. Maybe I was a little bit fatter back then. I don't know. But I definitely put my foot down on a hot roof, and some of the granules kind of shift because the asphalt literally was a little bit molten and shifted a little bit under my feet. And if I took my foot away, I could see a half circle ring of bare asphalt where there was no granules and a buildup of granules, and it's kind of bumpy towards the bottom where my foot slid down and took the layer of the shingle that had the asphalt on it with it. If you're doing a double pull, the same kind of thing happens on the feet of your ladder. This does happen on hot roofs. It also happens on cold roofs where it's opposite, where it's very brittle. I'm actually somewhat, He's right that if it's hot and malleable, then the hail would kind of impact and drive the granules into it. But you're also talking about an event that probably includes some rain. So I don't know if hail falling on a hot roof would ever really occur if the roof is wet. So I like your idea here. And sometimes you can have heavy hailfall that occurs before the rain hits it. So in those events, it would definitely be different, but this wouldn't be describing every event. Most hailstorms fall with rain. Curious what you think about. I think we would have a really good episode with him. A couple of years back, I began getting a weather report. I never claimed that is specific to the insured's address from a company called Weather Guidance. The reports are only around $25 or so. They will give you a report that is signed by a meteorologist and specific to that address. I then email the report to the insured and ask them what date of loss they believe caused the damage. This gets me out of it. Hailtrace does a nice meteorologist evaluation as well. I don't know if that's an additional service or something they just give to me for free. I don't know. But Hailtrace does that as well. They don't sign it. That's actually interesting. Do they stamp it like an engineer? Very curious. Neck Tattoo says, sorry I'm late. What did I miss? Fucking everything. Jesus. Stop being late. I'm not going to redo the whole show for you.
Call me tomorrow, John.
Great responses. I provide the best hail recon or PLRB date. PLRB date. Now, this is a puzzle. Post-loss. Hail recon or PLRB. Property loss. Post-loss.
I mean, it's a
is
platform,
L loss?
right? It's some type of platform.
Platform.
Well, I'm saying it's Hail Recon or PLRB, which is, what is that? It's another platform like Hail Recon.
Could it be? I've never heard of a PLRB. I'm really curious, and I don't want him to answer what it is.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know either. Damn it, I got nothing. You guys throw some guesses in the commentary. Somebody's going to know what this is. Eric, if you post the answer, I swear to God, we'll do it. Already posted that. Somebody guess what that is. PLRB. Sounds like a good hail cannon experiment. Hell yeah, it does. Weatherguidance.com. That's the one that he posted up there. The thing is, even with the cooling effect of the water, that's still subjective. All of it's subjective. Take a hot pan that you add water to a small amount of water. Can take a hot pan that you add water to a small amount of water and hit evaporation point instantly. All right. You probably meant to delete parts of it. You probably edited it and didn't realize. Damn it. Aaron Tuck's got it. Property Loss Research Bureau. Is that a thing? Is it?
You
ever heard of that?
Well, I don't know. The FBI of property losses. I like it.
Bad punctuation. Yeah, it was. It was bad punctuation. Yeah, you take a small amount of water to a hot pan and it sizzles. I get you. All right. It'll actually jump the little sphere of water. It's almost like it's hovering on the steam. It's actually really cool. Property Loss Research Bureau. Is that a thing?
I've never heard
All right, Eric. Is that right? He probably doesn't know what PLRB is. That's why he wrote PLRB. That's my guess.
He was thinking peanut butter and jelly.
I don't know. We started having a good conversation here towards the end. Should we keep it going, or it's been an hour? I felt like we kind of stumbled for the first 20 minutes on this show. Sometimes I wish I could delete half of a show.
No, man. Hey, look, it's all about momentum. Sometimes that's why there's 9 innings. That's why there's 4 quarters. Sometimes.
Right.
Okay.
Some people stopped watching on the 4th inning.
Well, that's their fault. And then they're going to hear about the overtime, double overtime win. It's their fault.
That's true.
There's
We need to just, one of the problems with having a live show is sometimes there's parts of a live show that aren't as great as other parts. If you don't do a live show, if you record these separately and then edit them down like a lot of the people do, then it ends up being a decent show. But then somebody has to go in afterwards and do that. Yes, that is a thing. A lot of insurers use it. Post Loss Research Bureau.
Property Loss Research Bureau. And also, just so
Loss
everybody
Research
knows, there's a very limited amount of shows that actually go live. Just letting everybody know that. So we like to go raw, go live, and hit it. We're not scared. Are you scared, Matt? I'm not scared.
Sometimes.
Just a little bit, just a tad.
There are moments when somebody comes up with something like Property Loss Research Bureau that I probably should know that exists, and I don't. And then I look really dumb.
No,
I feel really dumb. It's humbling experience sometimes.
It's good.
You guys get to see me eat crow. Is that the right terminology? With egg on my face.
Eat crow is when you say that something, or like you're determined that this is the right answer, and then it's not, and then you say, it's like, foot in the mouth.
Allstate and Pilot uses it.
Oh,
well, now I don't want to.
I've never heard of this before.
Crap.
Hey, what state is Eric from? Do you know, Matt?
Eric, I don't know. I've
never heard of that before.
This live is much appreciated. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, you're welcome, buddy.
Thank
all
you,
the
Andrew.
time.
I think Stephen Hadhazi is in friggin' Hawaii watching this show, just getting a huge tan. And I don't know. Can they even lift trucks out there? I don't even know if he's a real public adjuster right now. Who knows?
On the beaches of Hawaii. I don't feel bad for you.
I don't know. I don't feel bad for you. You know what, Stephen? Go screw yourself. Is PLRB owned by Blackstone or Vanguard? There's a whole conversation going without us right now because we don't know shit about this thing. He's in Indiana.
Okay. So maybe that's why it's up in. I've never seen that before. So
I'm gonna look into it now. I've got it pulled up on my screen over here. There's educational opportunities for Farm Bureau.
I bet
there's a Georgia Regulatory Bulletin Emergency Adjuster Authorization. Have you seen the bulletin from Georgia?
Send it over to me. I probably have, but let me look at it, see what date it is on there.
Probably. This would have come out like this week or last week.
Last week, I would not have seen that.
100%. I haven't seen it either. I haven't got. I actually, I'm not using the email address that I was getting notifications in anymore. You might look into that. It's going to be right on the DOI's main page just because it's a bulletin that just came out. So it's not really going to be too difficult. But apparently that was on the PLRB website. I feel dumb for not knowing what this is. You know what? I'm going to get someone from PLRB to be on the show, and we're going to ask them a whole bunch of questions and make them feel awesome. We're going to stroke the hell out of their egos. We're going to get them to say some stuff that they probably shouldn't say on live channel like this, right?
That's our goal. That's our goal.
What we do want, if you guys want to help us find, we're trying to have some really impactful episodes. And the best way to do that is to get someone from the other side. We want either an IA that is currently an IA, not one that used to be and is defected and has given us all this crap. I want somebody that's currently an IA that can give me a good, solid argument back, something that we can actually get some good information on. We can develop maybe some common ground. I've been going through some policies with my PA 101 class today with my students. And, sometimes the policy just doesn't support their position. And that's the reality of it. The policy language is there, even if we don't like it. So sometimes they are right. Sometimes we're the bullshit. I would love to have someone from the opposite side, whether that be an engineer or an adjuster, preferably an engineer. And then also an adjuster. If you guys know somebody that would be willing to do that isn't going to get in trouble, I honestly don't even care if we put them in the dark so we can't see who their face is, and even change or give them some kind of a weird voice inflection, kind of like that old show, Wanted. Was that the name of the show? Cops? I don't know. Something like that, where it's,
I have a really deep voice. This really isn't my voice.
That's what we'll do.
I was attacked by a perpetrator.
Something like that. We can do that. I'm okay with that. We can do that. I want their side of things. We get better if we hear their side and they have a logical, reasonable argument. Sometimes we're wrong. I want to be proven wrong about stuff. Let's find the truth behind it. If you guys know somebody to be willing to do that, please hook them up with us. We'd really appreciate it. Email address is Matt, spelled with only one T, at listentothisbull.com. One T.
That's it. And here's the difference. Like, why is it so, Matt? If a carrier podcast asked you to come on and said, "Come on, I want to talk to you about things," you would not even hesitate. I know that.
No, not even.
Same with
I've actually
me.
been trying to do that.
You see, same with me. Same with other people in this industry. But if you flip the script, it's crickets.
But is it their legal department that's stopping them, or do they think that they're just going to get beaten up? Do we give the persona that we're going to just beat someone up?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty reasonable.
I mean, I know how I am. Look, let me tell you this. At NCI, we've had a lot of different courses that we presented. I've had quite a bit of students that were sent because the person that owns their company was an IA or a staff adjuster that met with my firm, remembers me or my firm specifically, and remembers that we were fair. And they sent their students to our class because of that, because they thought these guys know what they're doing and we can learn a lot from it. I know that we're going to be fair to them, but I also have this persona where I talk about everything as being bullshit. I never actually say that to adjusters. I don't get that way with adjusters. It's easy for me to make it sound funny or something on a live show, but I'm just not like that in the field with an actual adjuster. Very reasonable. But I have a feeling that we have that persona, though.
No, look, just like you said, I can tell you all the attorneys I deal with on a daily basis for all the big guys, they would say the same thing. I truly believe that they were going to say, look, he's reasonable. And I do that because I get things done for my clients. And just like
Right.
if I'm up there flexing my legal muscle, guys, the old saying, catch more flies with honey than vinegar a lot of times, but it's just the truth. Hey, let's get somebody on here. Let's get an adjuster. Let's get an IA. Let's put them in the Darth Vader mode.
We need your help to do that, though. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it, guys.
We need your help. If you guys can help us out, it would be tremendous. Whoever can find that contact for me, I will send you a free Listen to This Bull t-shirt. By the way, on listentothisbull.com, you can purchase t-shirts now. We actually have shirts available with different things on it. A lot of them are a lot of fun. So feel free to go to listentothisbull.com so you can purchase a t-shirt. What else? And the 28th is the Dealing with Engineers class in Dallas, Texas. And that's really all that I have for announcements. Next week, we have, if she really is going to actually agree to this, and I think she will, we're going to have Sarah Parker on again. Sarah Parker has been working with me on that Dealing with Engineers class. So I'm hoping to have Sarah Parker and John Senak on because he's also going to be a small part of that class as well. But at least we'll have Sarah Parker. If you are a public adjuster and you don't know who Sarah Parker is, shame on you. Man, are you missing out? Holy crap, what a great mind. Wow.
And a great voice.
And a great voice. Sarah Mary Parker. There you go. That's what she's known as on Facebook. Sarah Mary Parker. I think it's her actual middle name. I don't know. She's Canadian. She's fantastic. She's smart as hell.
She is. She's great. We had her on.
And then the week after that, I'm probably going to have Stephen Hazi on, and he's going to teach me how to actually pronounce his name.
And then the week after that, we're going to have the Darth Vader adjuster on with the voice.
I'll move Steven if I have to, if we can get that on. All right. Darth Vader voice guy.
We're having
engineer or attorney. Actually, if I can figure out how to actually do that for someone, I might actually have some contacts that would work. But if you can find me someone willing to do that is currently on the other side and willing to have a solid, logical, reasonable argument about things, think about the adjusters that you've met that are actually good at what they do and have good arguments. Maybe someone that has even swayed your position before. That's who I want. I want someone who can teach us as we teach them. All right? If you can find that, free t-shirt.
There you go.
All right.
And not even argument's not the way to put it, just conversation. We just
Look,
wanna
an
have a
argument is simply a conversation where we have a difference of opinion. We can bring an argument. It's a debate more than anything else.
There you go.
But without
There you go.
argument doesn't have to be heated. I use the word argument because that's really what you're doing. It's not angry. It's not heated, but there's an argument. I'm presenting my argument. They're presenting theirs. Remington's presenting his. Whatever.
Let's see what
Doesn't have
happens.
to be heated.
I'm not
All right,
scared.
cool.
Let's do it.
All right, we're out. I'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.